Guys, it's been a long time coming, but I'm proud to announce that my hands are finally registered with the International Registry of Lethal Hands. This is the only place where your God-given gifts of danger can get the recognition that they truly deserve. Now you might be thinking, why on earth would anybody need to register their hands as lethal? Let me break it down for you. There are those among us whose hands are so downright dangerous, they need to be documented. Registration is a moral responsibility, and it's a vote for the greater good of humanity. The sole mission of the International Registry for Lethal Hands is to catalog the most formidable hands on the planet. So if you know someone, and you even suspect they possess lethal hands, do not hesitate. Register them immediately. And if you've ever looked at your own hands and thought, damn, these dogs are dangerous, don't settle. Go register. Head over to registeryourhands.com, fill out a simple form, and you're official. Remember, use the promo code Chael to save 20%, or just click on the link below. It's very difficult to not be enamored with Alex Pereira, not just what he's done or the fighter, but there's a very interesting gimmick there. Very interesting character. First off, go over to WWE, guys. WWE is largely about what? Interviews. The worst part of wrestling is what, guys? The wrestling match. Yeah, sucks. You got to put up with that, though, to get to the music, to get to the walkout, and to get to the promo. You got to go put up with a match. It's like watching boxing. The worst part of boxing is the boxing. Everything else, though, is kind of entertaining. So I share that because Brock Lesnar comes in. Brock Lesnar is a once-in-a-lifetime attraction. I remember every time I have been in Brock's presence. I remember the first time I saw Hoist Gracie. I remember the first time I saw Wanderlei Silva. I mean, it's one of these things where you get these guys when you're part of this industry and there's like something around them. They're different. And Brock goes over there. Vince doesn't have him speak. Greatest part about wrestling. And you got a 300-pound man. How else is he going to be able to wrestle? I get it that Brock turned out to be pretty athletic and good. I'm just trying to more share the philosophy and the point with you, which was they bring this guy in. Talking's the most important thing. He becomes their biggest draw. He becomes their highest paid guy. He wears the same belt that Hulk Hogan once wore. The same belt that The Rock and Austin wore. And he doesn't do interviews. And I talked to Jonathan Coachman about that. I said, Coach, why doesn't Brock do interviews? And I'm a Paul Heyman guy, but I'm just sharing for you why and how, by design. It's not like they gave Brock a chance and it failed. And Coach said, because Vince believes monsters don't talk. Monsters are mysterious. You choose who they are. And generally people will choose that the monster is scary. So by keeping Brock quiet and not finding out that he's a decent guy, loves his daughter, goes home to his wife at night, right? I mean, if you keep that from everybody, you can really create a character. And it's one of the things about Alex, and I don't know if it's by design. Like, I don't know if I spoke Portuguese, if Alex and I would sit down and have these meaningful conversations, but Anthony Smith has met him and talked at lengths about what a great guy he is. Daniel Cormier met him, talked at lengths about how you can sit down, you can have a conversation, you cut it up and go back and forth. Go over to Shara. Goes into detail about Alex. And I just mean from a conversational standpoint, sitting, visiting with the guy. And when they turn the camera on, he doesn't say anything. In fact, he's even created a language. I thought Sharma was a Portuguese word. I've now found out that it's not. It's not a word anywhere. It's like a group of syllables that he put together to form a sound. That's really fascinating, quite frankly. And this is really a very fascinating concept. And I bring it to you guys because he's certainly following Vince McMahon's code that monsters don't speak, and he qualifies as a monster. Then when he goes to Brazil, he's got the tribal background, which is fascinating. That is fascinating. If you can take tools, largely man-made tools, and you can go out into the forest and you can survive, Like if you have that skill, in this case it's bow and arrows, but I'm just speaking to that is interesting. That qualifies as warrior status. Whether you ever damage a person inside of a cage or not. Then, when he's not doing the warrior gimmick, weigh-ins for example, when he's not doing that, he's wearing these new fly outfits around, man. He showed up, he's in this jumpsuit. I don't even know who makes it. It looks like, it's wear something Conor McGregor would wear, which is the last thing that you would think that Alex Pereira wears. Now, what does it mean? Are those a sponsor? Or is that's a wild outfit? It's like anyone's going to see it no matter how cool they think Alex is and then go buy it. Nobody can pull it off. You got to be a badass to dress a fool like this guy dresses. And it works, right? I mean, it's interesting. Everything about him is interesting. And you can't talk about Jon Jones lately without talking about Pereira and Aspinall. Can't go that far without having to answer questions about Pereira. They keep trying to ask him about Jones, but Jones has never called Aspinall out. Pereira called Aspinall out. Now, when people try to get Pereira and Jones together, Pereira has never called Jones out. Pereira called out Aspinall. Generally, this is the way it would work. When you have two guys that are trying to fight the same guy, okay? So you got two guys that you, the audience, in Pereira and Tom, and you're trying to get those two guys against Jon. Generally speaking, after a small period of time of going back and forth about who you'd rather see, you, the audience, gets those guys against each other, which is Pereira versus Aspinall. And it's not our idea. It was Pereira's idea, and then it was supported by Aspinall. And, I mean, don't think for one moment that Aspinall would blink if he found out he was fighting Pereira. The difference is he thinks he's got business with Jones. And the difference is Tom Aspinall is so close to having climbed that mountain, but he's not there. He doesn't have what Pereira's got, which is the world undisputed title. He doesn't have what Jon Jones has, which is the world undisputed title. Don't think for a second that Tom Aspinall is afraid to fight Alex Pereira and then go into Jon Jones, or go into Jon Jones and then go into Alex Pereira. And I'm only sharing with you, it's surprising to me that conversation hasn't started, which is Pereira Aspinall. Now, let's talk about Jones. Jones had made a comment on Aspinall, and he made a comment to the public. He said, you guys have finally found somebody younger and bigger. But where were they 10 years ago? When I was here and I was fighting, I was going through guys. Where were they? Why am I having to answer questions if I'm the greatest ever, I have the greatest career ever? How is it even a question? It's a fair assessment by Jon, but I just want you to imagine it from this perspective. Most fighters, if given the preference, would choose that. The very thing that Jon just pointed out. A much younger guy, a much bigger guy. They would choose that. Because now, if things don't go their way, and you've only got one of two outcomes, you win the match, you don't win the match. That's the only two outcomes. There's not a third one. You get your hand raised, you don't get your hand raised. So in the event that you don't get your hand raised, most fighters would choose to have the younger, bigger guy so that story is already told. If Jon was put in that position and he chose Pereira, he's now choosing the same guy. And there is a time where we will talk about Jon the way that we talk about Dan Henderson and Randy Couture, about these guys that could go later in life, push that 40 number. It could be over any day. They still look great. I can't say they're in their prime, but I can't say they're out of their prime. Like there's a day very soon when we do that about Jon. But if Jon fights Pereira, they weigh the same. In fact, they are the same. Jon was the greatest light heavyweight of all time. Now it looks like Pereira might be the greatest light heavyweight of all time. That in and of itself makes it compelling. Jon's a big guy that cut to light heavyweight, so he decided to stop cutting it. Now he's at heavyweight. He's not overly large for the size. Well, that would be the exact same thing with Pereira. Oh, by the way, they're both 37. Like if Jon was put in a position to choose, I'm telling you, what most guys would choose is they would not want their equal. They would not go on a guy where they don't have a built-in excuse. You want to talk about losing? Lose to a guy from a different generation. You can't lose to a guy your same generation, your same age. It brings everything into question. I understand that Mike Tyson made it through that. I do understand that. But when Mike Tyson fought Evander Holyfield, Evander's 2 years older. Evander was there the entire time Mike was there. And Evander said he's not the best in the world. He's never been the best in the world. He tried to make the Olympic team. He failed. I made the Olympic team. I even brought home a medal for the country. Every day that Mike's been here, I've been here, and I can beat him. He's not the world champion. He's never been the best in the world. And had he fought me like he should have, he never would have been known as world champion. And then Evander proved that that was true. And I get that Mike made it through that. Even in those defeats, Mike went on to be a bigger icon. I understand that, but I'm sharing for you, it can be a problem. Khabib had beaten everybody that he was asked to beat. But there was one guy that looked pretty damn good and was there at the same time, and Khabib never met him. His name was Charles Oliveira. And that conversation was out there. They had two common opponents, Justin Gaethje and Dustin Poirier. And Charles finished the pair in a combined 65 seconds faster than Khabib finished the pair. And that conversation was starting. Now, it ended up smoldering out because Khabib's protege was able to stop Charles. But I'm just sharing for you, like, it's not anything new that Jon is up against. It's the way that it works for everybody. But it is very possible that Jon finds himself in a position of having to choose between Pereira and Aspinall. And historically, with other fighters, it would be very rare that they would choose, in this scenario, Pereira over Aspinall.